instead of starting with making money and then obviously spending a lot of time on maintenance and management of your life and your possessions, and then only getting to your life and your ministry, which is the part that you should spend most of your time on, I suggested we turn it around and start with life and ministry, and then moving on to maintenance, and then finally getting to making some money. Now, it doesn't sound right in the current time. We're spending about 100% of our time making money because of the fuel price and the war and everything else is going on in the world. But we need to, whatever the circumstances, we need to spend our time working on God's things and the purpose of our ministry. And then finally, we were talking about your end-of-life checklist, where we tried to show you by way of reference to a book and other extracts from it. Session 1 was all about then of your end-of-life checklist and managing your life. So tonight we're going to spend time on the connection between your identity and your purpose in life. You'll see there's a book called Just SIMP IT, which is the secret to an effective life. And I will be endeavoring using these 4 letters, SIMP, and make it a verb to spell out to you why simplification is such an important thing in our lives. Now, I've always been intrigued by the power of simplicity. The simple things in life are free normally, and it's the simple things in life that make us happy. So if we look at the magic and the beauty that I've discovered in this principle of simplifying your life, you know, we can always complify our lives if we don't simplify it. If you want to use a word like complify or comp in terms of simplifying our lives, it's a book written by Edward Obono, and in the book, the book's name was Simplicity, and in the book he suggested we make a verb of the word simplicity, calling it SIMP, which is a wonderful thought. Now, I've then gone further and used the letters SIMP, what that book is all about, and also this, the book that I'm referring to tonight, which is the one I wrote, to explore and simp the underlying components of a simple, successful life. You'll find out that simple things also bring you a lot of joy and happiness. And I will be showing you the DNA of the word SIMP. The S in SIMP stands for security. We will be chatting a little bit about that, but identity is where I'm going tonight. It's about identity. I've got a word there called management, which is another book I wrote, Management. It's the art of managing yourself and your money. And then connecting the identity, your identity, with the purpose in your life. Insecurity or uncertainty, I believe, and I've found it in my own life as well, is the biggest challenge you and I will ever face during our lifetime here on earth. It's almost like it's our default mode. It's there by birth, and if we don't discover the secret behind simplifying your life and finding the S, or the security aspect of SIMP in our lives, it will be there until our death. So if we don't find the antidote in time, we will have a problem. We have to overcome this entrenched trait, I believe, is a prerequisite to ever finding lasting happiness. Now, I want you to just have a look at that statement. We have to overcome this entrenched attribute almost in our lives as a prerequisite to ever finding lasting happiness. You know, if you define happiness for yourself, you'll find that there are various ways of getting to the word happiness. The word happiness has got its own content in your own life, and everybody's definition of happiness differs. But it's not about money, because money normally messes up and takes your happiness away. I've written a book about what takes away your peace of mind, what makes you happy, and you'll always find it's about the fact that you have security or not that will give you happiness. So, having said that as an introduction, I believe that I'm sure it's sinking in at the moment, SIMP, where the S is about security. If you have security, food security, work security, everything else in life, even where you are heading in your eternal life sphere, then you will see this is where your happiness originates. It anchors your life, and it makes you happy. Identity. Remember I said the second letter in the word SIMP, which is a verb now, is identity. What is identity? Is that your ID book? If you present your ID book, will I know who you are? Well, the definition of identity is who you are. The way you think about yourself and the way you are viewed by the world and the characteristics that define you as a person. Examples of identity are a person's name or the ID photo or passport. But I believe this is not where it stops. This is who you are perceived to be by others. Now, people falsify their identity, ID photo and passports, but you know we don't fool many people because they see who we are through our conduct, through what you wear, where you stay, how you present yourself. But then they look further. They look at how you present yourself in your general life. So, as I say there, it's simply is about finding the secret to an effective life. So, S for security, I for identity. It is critically important that you know who you are. Everything is dependent on this. If you get it right, you will act with confidence. I've created a word called confidence, which is peace of mind, fidence, P-O-M, fidence. So if you want confidence and assurance, you need to find out who you are at home, everywhere you are, everywhere you conduct yourself, not only through your ID photo or your passport or what you're wearing and what you're driving. If you don't, you'll experience insecurity, and it will show in the confidence or lack of it in your life. If you want security and decisiveness, letting people know who you are and that you can act with assertion, with assertiveness, then we need to find out who we are by sitting down, asking ourselves what makes ourselves happy, what makes us tick. Now, as I say, it's all about simping, simplifying your life, not complicating it. It is a secret, but you will have the secret tonight. So let's put the right content of the I, not only in SIMP, but now this is a different angle. If you want to go through to the Bible, in Galatians 2 verse 20, St. Paul really shares a wonderful secret that he's discovered with us. He tells us, it's no longer I that liveth, but Christ that liveth in me. Now, this is Sunday evening. Yes, it is time. It is time to go to church. But, you know, with all this, internet conferencing and Zoom and all these other opportunities using the internet to go global, we need to actually bring the church into our homes, in our lives. And if we look at the I of identity and the I of SIMP, where the identity is what it's all about if you simplify your life, Paul gives us a nice secret. He says, you have to die. You have to die for yourself. Does not mean you stop living and stop breathing, but it means that you've got to get your balance right between eternal things, eternal worth things, and things that are materialistic in value. I've got a very interesting angle. I'm saying the value of a life is determined by its purpose. The purpose gives meaning to it. And we determine that purpose and that meaning. We will get to that later in this session. But if you put the I of identity and the I in SIMP together, you get an incredible, powerful principle. After security, you need to know who you are. As a matter of fact, you could either do it that way, or you can find your identity and then see that your identity is in your God. So it's your God that gives you the identity. So the meaning of identity is not necessarily surrounding yourself with materialistic things. I mean, I've just seen over the weekend a gentleman by the name of Charles Schwartzel has made 75 million rand in 3 days by playing for Live, you know, the new golf movement there in London. Now, I've discovered a very simple and effective way of organizing my life. I'm going to move on to the P in SIMP. We will, in the future sessions, probably the next one, we'll talk about management, which is the M in SIMP. But let's talk about the P in SIMP. It's a very simple and effective way of organizing my life, and maybe you can try this as well. It's about working around the purpose or your goal in your life, which should be trained on God, the God of your life. Always assists me to budget for and control the use of my resources and apply my God-given talents and skills. You know, some of them are naturally given to us, and some of them we have to acquire by going to varsity and education, but we learn these skills, acquired skills. We need to use it in such a way that we're always conscious of being accountable for our decisions and our actions and transactions. Now, life is not a transactional thing, but there's a lot of common sense in the word transaction. The P of purpose represents pleasing God. And you've got to please God only with all your heart, all your mind, all your life, always. This is your purpose in your life. Remember, the P in purpose stands for pleasing God. If this is the main thing in your life, the challenge is to constantly make sure that the main thing stays the main thing. And we have to remind ourselves often, because there are so many branches, there's so many temptations. It's normally materialistic and pleasure orientated, or even fortune. Well, it's fortune and fame, or power and pleasure that normally takes us away from the main thing in our lives, which should have an eternal value. The U in purpose, have a look at this, represents the fact that you are unique. You're not cloned, nor a copy of anybody else. You have been gifted by God with talents and treasures which make you as unique as your DNA. And I'm going to work towards the DNA when I get to your identity and your purpose, when I connect it. Nobody else can do the work and fulfill the task that God has given you to perform during your limited number of years on this earth. That's why I started with TIME, time. It's about time. You had a limited life. You got 7 days, 70 years, plus minus. And most of it, we don't know who we are, because we're always trying to struggle to find out who we are and where we're going. But I'm sure we sorted it out, most of us. The R in purpose represents resource management. It's your money, your time, your energy, your intellectual capacity, the opportunities God gives you, and all the unique talents and treasures you have locked up in your personality and in your physical body. The R represents the resource management, the managing of that resources. And can I give you the idea? You know, I've already told you TIME gives you time, intellect, money, and energy. But in Afrikaans, it's quite interesting. It spells the word getuig. I'm going to say this. I'm sure you can look it up in the dictionary if you don't know what it means. But getuig is to testify or to witness, to be a witness for somebody or for some bigger cause. So that big heavenly audacious goal that you're working towards. So Afrikaans, the G stands for geld. E stands for energie. T staan vir tyd. Die U staan vir jou uniekheid. It's 'n universele probleem ook, maar dit is jou unieke persoonlikheid. Die I staan vir jou intelligensie of die invloed wat jy het, jou intellek. En dan die G staan vir die geleenthede wat God jou gee om vir hom te getuig of om 'n ewigheidswaarde belegging in iemand se lewe te maak. So what I'm saying is, even if you play with the word getuig, or whether it's getuig or time, you will find the resources that God has given us. You will find it there. Now, just to finish this off, what we're saying is, none of your resources down the bottom of the slide there, none of your resources should be wasted or misappropriated. These scarce and limited sources should be carefully managed and applied only to further our big, heavenly, audacious goal. I think the original it was done by J.D. Rockefeller. He was talking about your big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, obviously, we're talking heavenly stuff here. It should not be utilized to further your own ego or your kingdom, building out your ego on earth, because there is always a greater, a bigger good that we should be striving for. So think upon that. So purpose stands for pleasing God, your uniqueness, the resource management, and of course, the next one goes without saying, but we don't spend enough time with this. You'll see when it comes up. It's the word planning. It represents adequate and proper planning. These things don't happen by themselves. A house doesn't get built just, by laying bricks on top of each other. You plan the thing. You're the architect of your own life. If your goal is clearly defined and your resources are available, it's an essential in applying those resources and getting you to your goal. Planning includes formulating your goals. I think we lost that one a bit. Let's see whether we can recover it by going a little bit back. We're almost through what I want to tell you tonight, but let's have a look. Let's just go back if we can for a sec and just look at that last slide, try to retrieve it here. Otherwise, I can just let you know again, it basically, it refers to your planning of how you're going to spend your resources in achieving and attaining your goal, whether it's an earthly goal or whether it's a heavenly goal. Remember, let's move on then. The O represents ownership. While we should be taking ownership of our lives by being responsible for our own deeds and actions, the emphasis here is on the title of your life and your assets. We do not own our own lives nor the resources entrusted to us. You'll see I always make an application because it's only the Word of God that gives us, that makes sense if we apply it to these principles and our lives against and measuring it against these principles that God has given us. We do not own our own lives. God is the owner. It's Psalm 24:1 that says it. He says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness of it, the world and they that dwell in it or on it. So we don't belong to ourselves. So we need to remember that it is God who has created us. He has given us the opportunity of living and making a difference, creating our own creation, so to speak, make it a masterpiece to please Him. So the ownership is always with God, unequivocally. And then the S of purpose. Here again, there's a surprise because it stands for being a steward. It's all about stewardship. Remember, we're trying to link identity with your purpose, and you'll see where we're going in a few minutes. If we acknowledge that God is the owner of everything, and we are mere stewards or managers of our lives, not the owners, but we are the beneficiaries, we're also even trustees. God has given us that power, and His resources are entrusted to us. Our whole mindset will change. Look at this, from fear to responsibility and joy. And we will thus enjoy life more abundantly because everything belongs to God and we understand it. He's given us specific life tasks, or one specific life task to fulfill. Now, something which we have discovered to be our passion. You know, everybody who really makes a difference have discovered that they have a passion. Some people find it in sport. Some people glorify God through the sport. For some people, sport is the God. So we have to be very careful when we glorify things, realizing that it should be to a higher power, something which we've discovered to be our passion. He will always supply the working capital. He will supply you the money, the time, the energy, and the intellect, the opportunity needed to accomplish your goal. All of this must, however, always be to the glory of God. We are not a God. Things aren't God's. God is the only God. In other words, God must get the glory and not us. He does not share his glory with us. Does not mean we sit in the church every minute of the day. It means God is in us every moment of the day. And we remember why he gave us these resources, and that we have a purpose, and we plan, we have ownership, we know who the steward is. And the E is very, very important. Somebody once said, life is short. Eternity is long. Eternity, it's what it's all about. It's about eternal worth, and it's about eternity. What we do on this earth, the way we conduct ourselves and spend God's resources, please note, it's not our resources. It's just God's resources he's actually lending us, will have a profound bearing on our life after death, not only before death, which is forever. If we are not convinced, now look at this. This is really something that struck me when I wrote it down. If we are not convinced, if you and I are not convinced and do not believe that there is an eternity waiting for us after this life, of course, this will affect our whole outlook and behavior in this life. We will eat and drink and be merry and spend everything today as if there's no tomorrow. We will sign things and get ourselves into debt. We will indebt our whole future to the point that we will have no present, and we won't have a future. Why would we bother if we know it's all just for now, here and now? So what is the purpose of everything then? Just to enjoy ourselves, build our own kingdoms, and then what? Because tomorrow we die? That is a very fatalistic outlook, I think, in life. So, to summarize, and we are finishing off this session, and we'd like to take some questions, I'm sure, after this. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. We can't answer them all. But have a look at purpose now in this context. Purpose is about pleasing God. You are unique. It's a universal concept. You have to have a purpose. You've got to have something to wake you up in the morning. What makes you, or what gets you, and what keeps you up? What makes you dream when everything else is falling apart? Well, we have a purpose. We have to do resource management. We've got to maximize and become efficient in how we spend our money, time, energy, etc. We've got to plan. We've got to see who the owner is and recognize it. And we've got to be the steward. A good steward doesn't steal from his master. So we have to always be careful of being a good steward. Steward is, in other words, is a manager. If you go to Luke 16, in the Bible, you'll find they talk about the good steward, the good manager, the bad manager. Actually, it was a bad manager, but then he made some good things. So in this case, it was not a good example. But we'll find that the word, it talks about the unwise manager in Luke 16, where Jesus tells the story. He says there was a manager, wasn't a good manager, but then he does a good thing. If you understand it at the end, maybe we'll touch on it later, but not tonight. We are all economists, because oikonomos is the Greek word for economy. If you look at economy, oikonomos is the Greek word for manager. So we're all managers. We're all economists. We're all managing money and people and things, but mostly we are responsible for giving account at the end of the day. So it's all about eternity. Now, to put everything together. Now, Jasper had once told me something which I haven't forgotten. He said, when we go through life, there's so many things we do We don't always understand how it, we've got so many things happening in our lives and things we teach ourselves and acquire skills, and we don't know how it all connects. But then one day it's like God or somebody just picks up the doily in your life. The doily is obviously the round object with it. Normally it's made out of material. So you pick that doily up in the middle, and then you'll see all these crystals, all these treasures down the bottom there, on the edges of the doily, come together when you lift it up at the center. And that was something, Jasper, I've never forgotten, and I've told you so. It's a beautiful application. And I'm saying, without understanding and recognizing our identity, remember, I'm complicating now, or simplifying, sorry, a complicated principle, and bringing identity and purpose together by saying this. Without understanding and recognizing our identity, we will battle to make sense of our purpose in life. Your purpose is your footprint on this earth. Your legacy is the footprint you will leave behind. It is something so important. It is actually the most essential thing when you get up in the morning. Now look at this for a last slide. You and I are defined by our purpose in our lives. Our purpose identifies us. We may even say, look at the new word I've coined, we are identified by our purpose. And that's what I said in the beginning, when I said the value of a life is determined by its purpose. The purpose gives meaning to it. And the most incredible thing that I've discovered, because people sometimes say, what do we control? I mean, we don't control anything. We don't control the weather. We can't control the economy. We can't control anything. Well, I'm telling you, you control your thoughts and your emotions and your intellect. You control that and you make decisions. And this is what it's all about. Life management, God's way. It is the only way, because the other ways don't work. It's about pleasing God. It's about giving your best shot and dedicating your life to Jesus, or the God of your life. I've always said, I can't tell you, because I'm not a Muslim, I can't tell you how it works, but I don't have to change because Christianity works for me. This was the second session about life management, God's way.